It's not a question physics can answer. Metaphysical questions demand a metaphysical answer. And so he chalks it up to permanent mystery. When presented with the solution of a transcendent mind, the idea that mind is fundamental to existence rather than just the material subject to the laws of nature, his response, even up to very recently, has been, I just don't know what to do with that. It doesn't fit within his metaphysic. All right, so now I've introduced you to the conversation, presented you to the fact that what we're dealing with is a rather large synchronicity, and it demands an explanation. So what I'll turn to now are some of the claims that are made in response to the presentation of this grand mystery. For example, well, humans have merely devised systems of mathematics to just fit the natural phenomena close enough, and that's how the scientific enterprise is made possible. I'd like to offer two responses to this. First of all, some of the mathematical systems in question were developed independently, meaning they had no known applicability in the natural sciences. And besides that, they were developed the way they were for aesthetic reasons. You may have heard phrases such as elegant mathematics. Yet, these same systems were later, and sometimes much later, discovered to be essential to scientific investigation. I want you to ponder that for the rest of the weekend, because that's magnificent and mysterious, and it cries out for an explanation. Here's an example for you: Einstein's theory of general relativity. When Einstein was developing relativity in the first few decades of the 20th century, he needed a non-Euclidean system of geometry in order to describe his theory of gravitation. And lo and behold, it turns out that the century before, roughly half a century before Einstein's doing his work, a gentleman by the name of Bernhard Riemann had developed exactly the type of non-Euclidean geometry that was essential to Einstein's work. Historian of mathematics Maurice Klein said it would have been a superhuman effort for one man to first develop a whole new system of geometry and then apply it to his entire theory of relativity. It just could not be done by one man in one lifetime. And so this was a fortuitous thing for the progress of modern science. Steven Weinberg, who just passed away actually in 2021, Nobel Prize 1979, in his book, Dreams of a Final Theory, he said, physicists generally find the ability of mathematicians to anticipate the mathematics needed in the theories of physics quite uncanny. It is positively spooky how the physicist finds the mathematician has been there before him or her. And again, another scientific materialist. Second response to this idea that we're just crafting mathematics to fit the science as we go is that mathematics maps onto the material world with such an astounding precision that it has even made successful predictions in fields such as particle physics, which involves intricate and very delicately balanced, elegant systems of equations. I'd like to give you a sensational example of this in action. Peter Higgs, Nobel Prize 2013. Back in the 1960s, Higgs is working with a team of colleagues to figure out a problem in the standard model of particle physics. And the problem was that according to their beautiful integrated system of equations, particles had no mass. But that doesn't make sense, because how do you get mass from constituents that have no mass? So Higgs and his team proposed this theory that all of empty space is permeated by a field with which particles interact to get their mass. Some liked it, some didn't, but the wonderful thing about it was it helped them preserve their beautiful, elegant system of equations, whereas just trial and error plugging numbers in to try to account for particle mass threw everything into chaos. So what we have here is mathematics being chosen for aesthetic reasons, and we have predictions being made based on mathematics, but no empirical support for this whatsoever. It wasn't for 50 years after this proposal, that empirical evidence was provided by the Large Hadron Collider. They were finally able to test Higgs field theory, and on the 4th of July, 2012, you may have seen some of the science headlines about the God particle being discovered. They announced that a particle fitting the right profile had been detected in the Large Hadron Collider. I love this photo of Peter Higgs. I can just imagine how vindicating this felt to stand in front of the Large Hadron Collider in celebration of the discovery and in celebration of the Nobel Prize. So 49 years after his prediction, he wins the 2013 Nobel Prize in Physics. Here is a picture of Peter Higgs with the late, great Stephen Hawking. And I just want to offer you one comment that Stephen Hawking made about this discovery. Physics would be far more interesting if it had not been found. Congratulations to them both, but the discovery of the new particle came at a personal cost. I had a bet with Gordon Kane of Michigan University that the Higgs particle wouldn't be found. That Nobel Prize cost me $100. Here's another claim in objection to this idea that we have a legitimate metaphysical mystery on our hands. And that is, well, naturalistic evolution of the human brain has just produced the capacity for advanced mathematical computations. Here's my first response to that. The mental aptitude that's actually necessary for advanced mathematics, and I hope you can all relate to this if you took any advanced mathematics ever in your life, seems far beyond the alleged powers of natural selection. But don't take my word for it. Paul Davies, a physicist who I believe is still at Arizona State University, put it this way in his book, The Mind of God, and by the way, he is not a religious believer. One of the oddities of human intelligence is that its level of advancement seems like overkill. While a modicum of intelligence does have a good survival value, it is far from clear how such qualities as the ability to do advanced mathematics ever evolved by natural selection. These higher intellectual functions are a world away from survival in the jungle. He goes on, the mystery is that human intellectual powers are presumably determined by biological evolution and have absolutely no connection with doing science. Why should this be? Just why Homo sapiens should carry the spark of rationality that provides the key to the universe is a deep enigma. Second response, genuine rationality, which is required in mathematical reasoning and scientific problem solving, cannot be produced by material processes alone. So now we're stepping into the realm of philosophy of mind. Let me just give you a few bullet points. You can do multiple PhDs in this field. Let me just give you a few bullet points to whet your appetite. Neurochemical reactions. If all our cogitations are nothing but neurochemical reactions, there are some big problems for the scientific enterprise. First of all, instances of material cause and effect, which is what would be going on in the brain if materialism, or to use the fancy philosophical term, physicalism is true, that means there would be no free judgment. can't have free will if everything going on in your head is just a domino effect adhering to the laws of nature. So no free judgment, and free judgment is required for genuine rationality. Secondly, a neurochemical reaction cannot adhere to an immaterial law of reason, a mathematical law, a law of logic. Chemicals can't decide A or B based on, oh, well, I have to choose A because A is logical and B would commit a fallacy. Chemicals don't do that. They don't have awareness. They can't choose. And finally, a neurochemical event cannot be about something. In philosophy, we call this the problem of intentionality. And it simply means that matter, physical stuff, isn't about something. It can be a medium, but it is not the message itself. So those are just three rather large problems for this idea that if we are nothing but matter, if everything that goes on inside of our skull is just chemical reactions, we would not be able to do science in the first place. Don't take my word for it. Another scientific materialist, Sean Carroll, in his book, The Big Picture, put it this way: there is no direct evidence for free will, and it violates everything we know about the laws of nature. In order for libertarian freedom to exist, it would have to be possible for human beings to overcome the laws of physics just by thinking. So he gets it. Sean Carroll gets it. It makes me wonder how he thought this book was produced, actually. So we circle back around to this idea of cosmic comprehensibility. Mathematics, the material world, and the human mind working in concert so that we can think God's thoughts after him, so that we can make scientific discoveries. So to use my fancy word again, we have this synchronicity, this astonishing set of coincidences that do not have causal connections between them. And this demands a metaphysical explanation, remember, because it is a metaphysical problem. And Kepler's idea of archetype, copy, and image, which has carried on since Kepler in Christian theology, not in these words, but in concept, is satisfying, it's unifying, and it really gives us a solution that covers all the bases. I'd like to end with a very short poem that Kepler wrote himself about this grand cosmic harmony. As God the Creator played, so he also taught nature as his image to play, the very game which he had played before her.